Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special bonus episode of the Spoiler Warning Podcast. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week on the show, we usually dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. But this week, as we said, bonus episode, Stephen is calling in from the 2024 Cannes Film Festival to give us a little dispatch of some of the films that he's seen. Stephen, how are you feeling?
I am already tired, and it is only the third official day of the festival. So I think it's going to be a long fest this year. But I'm feeling good. It's just shy of 1 a.m. right now as we record this. I'm sitting in an Airbnb. I've probably slept a total of 10 hours since I landed here 4 days ago. 3 days ago. Time is kind of blurry.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling fresh. Gonna pop a melatonin soon. But, you know, it's always invigorating to go through the festival experience. Like, you and I have done this together before. Like, we've had our own hectic, especially the first time we went to Toronto, you know, with the just back-to-back-to-back screenings and very little sleep. This has felt a lot like that if you also throw jet lag and external writing deadlines into the mix, which is a lot of fun to experience.
Yeah. And you have another full week of this, and then you're finally done?
Yeah, I do. So Tuesday of this week was technically the start of the festival, but all there was an opening ceremony and a single film that evening, basically. It's almost not a day of the festival, except for that one thing at night. And this runs from that Tuesday until the following Saturday. So I am here for another 8 days, basically, from the time that we're recording right now.
Nice.
So it's a marathon, not a sprint, and I am sprinting, which is very, very smart of me.
So, we're about to get into the films, but as far as what you've seen so far, how much of it were you able to catch all as premieres, or did you do some of the second run films? Like, how did that work out for you?
So I did get into every premiere this year, meaning like I had the option to go to all of the galas, but one of the films I decided to do a morning after screening instead, just to basically I caught was it Furiosa? Yeah, I caught Furiosa, and after that there was the premiere of a movie called The Girl with the Horn The Girl with the Needle.
With a needle.
Directed by Magnus von Horn.
There you go.
That was premiering after Furiosa, but because I was trying to get an article out the door for David Chen's Decoding Everything Substack, I decided to push that into a morning screening instead to give myself more time to write. But otherwise, all of these have been the red carpet premieres, it's fun. It's already getting to the point where the novelty of walking the red carpet has completely been lost on me, and I basically just make a beeline for the entrance as fast as humanly possible. Trying to make my way around all the people that are pausing for photos from paparazzi and just being like, how quickly can I get inside so I can pick the best seat I can possibly get before the swarm of other people show up?
Yeah. How chill are the morning after screenings compared to that?
Oh, so chill compared to that. For one thing, there's no dress code in the morning or afternoon screenings, even at that same venue, the Lumiere. So you walk the red carpet in whatever the hell you want, which for me, I'm wearing the Christopher Schnese uniform, which people who've never seen Chris should know is a button-down shirt with the sleeves kind of rolled up. And because just in case they decide to have a vague dress code of like, you look too sloppy in a t-shirt, I try to come a little prepared. But basically you can walk with whatever you want. Security is very, very lax. So they still check your bag, but you can bring anything. Like I brought like an iPad and some food and a cup of coffee and a giant water bottle. Like they don't care at all in the morning screenings. And also you could pretty easily show up like 15 minutes before the movie starts and know that you're going to get a good seat, because the morning screenings are just not going to be full unless it's for like a Furiosa or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood or like one of those giant events that everyone wants to make sure they catch. So if I were smart, I would do way more of those morning after screenings. But the problem is I get in this like obsession with metrics. And the metric I want to hit is how many movies do I see and what variety do I see? And the problem is if you watch those morning after screenings, that is a slot that could have gone to a sidetrack like Uncertain Regard or The Director's Fortnight, which are both things where movies that we have loved before have come from. After Sun came from something called Critics Week, by the way, which is like the fourth or fifth run track of the festival that people don't typically talk about. So I try to use the first half of the day to do those other ones, which means the evening has to be all the red carpets. If I were willing to watch a few less movies in a given day, I would do way more of the morning screenings and probably have a much happier life.
I'll ask you the same question again in 8 days when you're trying to figure out how you're feeling.
Exactly, because I made a little spreadsheet of all of the movies that I want to catch and which of those I've managed to get a ticket for and what like jigsaw puzzles should happen if, let's say, jet lag makes me not fall asleep until 6 a.m, which has been known to happen when I show up in France. And if my plan is correct, I'm going to wind up having seen maybe like 20 of the 22 films in competition at an actual red carpet premiere, as well as like 5 out of competition red carpets, and just like a tiny number are going to be left for the morning after. Which, again, I cannot stress enough is fucking dumb. But, hey, I made it all this way with 3 tuxedos, so I need to use them somehow.
That was going to be my next question, is how gross is your tuxedo? But I guess it's 1/3 as gross as it would be.
Well, so far, today was my first day of changing tuxedos. I decided to just do batches, basically. Like, this is the tux. These are the... I'll be honest, this is the one shirt I'm going to wear with it. Like, I brought a bunch of them, but putting on those, like, cufflinks and those little studs for tuxedo shirts takes so much time that I've decided to pick one shirt and just, like, pre-stud it. And I've given myself 2 to 3 days per shirt. And I've decided as long as I only wear it in the evening and I don't, like, run around too much, I won't smell too gross. So, yeah. Today was my first day with a new shirt and new tuxedo, and it felt amazing.
Yeah. So you're stacking them and then swapping as opposed to alternating every day, so that at least the second time you wear it is 3 days after the free. You just have it.
Yeah, I've been stacking them. Really what it is I decided the big premieres, for whatever reason, I feel like I should wear the nicest suit, like just in case I take a cool photo of myself or something like that, or like someone else. If paparazzi snaps a picture. So I have basically 1 good tux, like an Armani tux, and 2 like things that you would get your shitty junior who was going to prom or homecoming or whatever, like just like really cheapo Men's Warehouse tuxes. So I burnt 3 back-to-back days with the good tux.
just for the record, Steven didn't say the shitty tux he would get a junior. He said the tux you would get a shitty junior.
Yes, I meant that. Like your shitty kid that, you know, never dresses up and doesn't even want to go to the school dance.
Underachiever.
Exactly. Like the slacker who just has to show up. Like you go to Men's Warehouse and you're like, what is the worst thing I can possibly get that kind of fits? So anyway, because Cannes this year kind of front-loaded the big things, like there's the opening ceremony on Tuesday, there was Furiosa on Wednesday, and then last night was Megalopolis. I busted out the nice tuxedo all the time. So maybe in the future I'm going to alternate, but for now I burnt the nice one early on in the festival.
Gotcha.
It might see the light of day for the closing ceremony. We'll see. I think a week will give it enough time to be back to its former glory. That's how dry cleaning works, right? You just leave it in a closet for a week.
All right. So we've talked about the time you've been having. How about we talk about some of these films, Stephen?
Sure. So I can just dive in. I don't know if... I guess I'll run down all the things I saw just really briefly. Why not? That's kind of how we've established this at other festivals where we're reviewing them together.
Yeah.
So one thing about Cannes that surprises people who have never been before is the opening film. You would think the opening film at a festival would be like a big deal, right? That would be like the splashy thing that you use to get attention, right? Opening and closing would be like the tent poles, and then maybe like one in the middle to get people engaged. Cannes, for some reason, has a tradition of making its opening film be like totally mediocre, vaguely comedic, but like they almost never pick a movie that is actually going to be very good or even in the competition for the Palme d'Or to open. A few years ago, for example, The Dead Don't Die was the opening film, which did not do very well here at all. Last year, the opening film was starring Johnny Depp, which meant many of us boycotted it. And they kind of almost do this on purpose. It feels like they try to open the festival with something that's going to be provocative and kind of controversial just to like send a message to everyone that they're not as highfalutin or whatever as people think they are. So all that to say, this year the festival opened with a movie called The Second Act by Quentin Dupieux. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that French name wrong.
It sounds right to me.
Yeah, this is basically a meta comedy following four people who are meant to be kind of in a weird relationship dynamic, but almost immediately you learn they are actually actors who are acting that they're in a relationship dynamic, and they realize there's a camera pointed at them. And so they'll be having these conversations. Like it starts with two guys talking about, you know, this girl that they want to hook up with, and someone says something offensive, and the other guy says like, oh, watch out, you're going to be canceled. And he's like, no, what do you mean? It's fine. I just believe blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, are you fucking crazy? There's a camera pointed at us, dude. Like, chill out. We're going to, you know, this is going to hurt our careers. And the movie basically keeps doing this where it'll have characters interacting with each other as characters, but then suddenly revealing that they know that they're in the middle of a movie and they're actually the actors that the camera is pointed at. Léa Seydoux is in this movie. Vincent, I'm not going to pronounce his last name right, but the guy from Titan, basically, yeah. the guy who's like super buff in Titan, he was also in this movie. They're all poking fun at themselves. They're all having a lot of fun, but man, I thought the idea fell flat. Like after like 10 minutes, I was like, okay, movie, I get what you're doing. I get everything you're doing. And then it just made me live with another, like, I don't know, hour and a half of watching it do the same thing over and over again. It was very kind of masturbatory. Like, it was fine. I chuckled a little bit. Like, it's always fun when actors get to kind of make fun of themselves in a movie, but it wasn't a lot to write home about.
Yeah, I mean, from what I can see, it seems like all the scores are pretty average for this film. Like, anybody who's talking about it is very middling. What was the reception in the room for it?
People were laughing, you know.
Question mark.
But the thing is, the Cannes audience is a very easy laugh. That's what I've learned. Like, I think in an international festival environment, when you have a language barrier, anything that is like remotely funny, everyone is gonna like burst into laughter just because they're excited to have something that they can share in together.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. Like, really broad comedy tends to work like gangbusters at Cannes, right? Like if there's a movie where all of a sudden a person makes like a reference to sex or like says something filthy or whatever, the audience is always going to erupt in laughs, even if it's actually like not a very funny moment.
Yeah.
So people seem to be vaguely vibing with the movie, but it didn't get like a long standing ovation or anything like that. It was kind of one of those things where people like politely standing ovated for like 2 or 3 minutes, which is the lowest any movie at Cannes is ever going to get. and then left.
Is it because that's how long it takes for the people standing to realize that like everybody's done down below and they go, oh, shoot, and then they stop?
You joke, but there is a camera that projects everything onto the screen, pointing at the cast and crew and all the people standing and applauding for them. So even those of us in the balcony still know exactly when the clapping has stopped.
Okay, nice.
But way, way, way more clapping happened before the movie opened when Meryl Streep got an honorary Palme d'Or. That was like I want to say that was like 13 solid minutes of people standing and cheering before she was allowed to start going into her speech. It was pretty ridiculous, but people love Meryl.
Yep. uh, all across the world. All right, do you want to take us into the next thing?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing I caught when the festival had really begun was this little anthology called Directors Factory Philippines. This is basically a project that I've learned the Directors Fortnight does every year, where they give 4 directors a budget to make a short film and also pair them with established directors from other countries. And it's kind of seen as like a training ground or proving ground where a director will make a short film and then hopefully that will become a calling card that will let them make a feature instead. So this time it was 4 films made by different Filipino directors, and all of them were basically highlighting different aspects of Philippine culture. There was a short about a woman whose mother is dying of cancer and kind of just the last fun day or 2 days that they spend together. There was a film that was mostly about interpretive dance as a way for people to show how they feel about frustration with living in their kind of more rundown neighborhood. There's a film called Nightbirds, which was about, as far as I can tell, literal people who become chickens who rescue other birds / people from potentially bad fates. That one, I have to admit, I had a lot of trouble following what it was going for.
At night, they turn into a chicken, and while they're a chicken, they rescue other birds.
Yes, and this, at the risk of spoiling another movie, this is not the only movie I've seen already where a person turns into a bird.
Just by title, I can guess what movie you're talking about.
Yeah. I know, at least metaphorically. But yeah, they were. And the final one was a film about a mother and a daughter who have been separated from their home island by what appears to be some kind of local war. We don't ever see it. We're just told that they no longer get to live where they used to live, and they're kind of experiencing some sort of post-traumatic stress. And there's a moment where a person is jackhammering and they jump down on the floor as if they're hearing gunfire. And it's kind of just a little meditation on, on the trauma of living in a place that has been plagued by political uncertainty. So These are all little, 15 to 25 minute snippets. But they were charming. They were lovely. At least 2 of them I thought were really, really, really great. And I really hope these directors get to make more things in the future.
Nice. What do you got up next?
Yeah, up next, I saw a movie called Wild Diamond. This was the first in-competition film that I saw in the festival, and I thought it was fucking great.
I could tell from the description that this is going to be
exactly. This is an incredibly Steven film. Basically, like if you took 8th grade but made it more gritty, make the character be 19 years old instead, and then combine it with like American Honey and How to Have Sex. Like this is that movie. It's basically following a 19-year-old social media influencer who, she, like a lot of characters in movies I've seen this year, she doesn't have a great home life. She doesn't have a lot of money. She doesn't have a whole lot of possibility in front of her, and she sees social media as a way to escape from the confines of her day-to-day life. In particular, she auditions for a reality show that would take her from the south of France, where she lives, into Miami. And she's hoping that if she gets on this show, it will springboard her into a full career of basically having sponsorships, having adoring fans, and being able to live the good life. But in the meantime, she's someone who, much like the characters in How to Have Sex, are trying to live the good life anyway. She's a party girl. Like, she goes out drinking, she loves dancing, she loves hanging out with her friends. Sometimes they get into crazy fights with each other, other times they're being loving and friendly. And I just thought this was a really tender coming-of-age story with a really nuanced take on social media. Like, this is not damning the fact that she lives online or that she's just trying to cultivate a mass of followers. It acknowledges that there's something kind of superficial about, posting a selfie video saying how happy she is when 2 seconds before the video started she's been crying, but it also does kind of say, yes, this is a source of hope for people, and this is kind of a necessary thing for her. I just thought it was really interesting and even-handed, beautifully shot, and it was a feature debut too, by the director Agatha Riedinger. I'm going to pronounce it German. I'm not sure. And having your feature film debut at Cannes is like a pretty big deal. And so I think she has a bright future ahead of her. And I also think Wild Diamond is something that would also be up your alley when it eventually comes out sometime, I don't know, next summer, judging by how these things usually go.
Yeah, when I read it, I was like, definitely a Steven thing. I will probably enjoy it too. It seems like the reception to it has been pretty good. I think I saw that it was based on a short. Do you know anything about that? Okay.
No, I know nothing about it. For many of these movies, I only know like the French title, and then I Google the translation just so I can have something in my brain to latch onto.
Yeah.
I almost never have any context beyond the name of the movie.
Yeah, like I've been trying to like follow along and have like the tiniest inkling of like what you've been watching, but I don't want to read anything that actually tells me, because, you know, like some people write their reviews and are like, and then this is all the stuff that happens. So it's like I'm only trying to look for things that have tiny little descriptions about it so that I'm not like too much diving into more information than I actually want to hear. But yeah, I was just curious if that thing is
I guess
available.
Letterboxd doesn't do synopses. Is that true? Like, there's not a place where you can just get because I know IMDb often won't have any info for these movies yet, or if it does, it's like one sentence.
Yeah. But that's I prefer the one sentence version to the like, because sometimes you have to like read through a bunch of stuff somebody's saying around the film, and all of a sudden they go, and then this is how it ends. You're like, what the hell? But anyways, I think next up on the list, you have just like this tiny little indie film that probably nobody watched. Yeah,
I don't think anyone's ever heard of it. It's a movie. The name sounds like it might be Italian. Furiosa. Yeah, so I saw Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, had its red carpet debut in Cannes, it is out of competition. And this is kind of a tradition for them, too. Last year, the new Indiana Jones movie premiered here. My first time attending Cannes, Solo, a Star Wars story, premiered here. So they seem to like doing big budget spectacles, and especially prequels, it seems like.
Apparently.
Debuting on the red carpet. But this is coming out less than a week from today. Right? Yeah. So this is very much a thing that the world will see really soon. I got to be honest, I mostly attended it just to experience the red carpet and be around all the stars and everything. Normally, if it was a movie that I didn't care that much about the cast and crew, I would just say, fuck it. I'll watch some little international indie instead and catch this when it comes to theaters in a week. But I had a blast watching Furiosa. In preparation for it, I watched not only Fury Road again, which I famously liked but didn't adore the way everyone else adored way back in 2015. And I was fucking wrong. Like, watching it again, that movie is absolutely amazing. I don't know if back then I just hadn't seen enough action films to know how incredible Fury Road was by comparison. But yeah, Fury Road holds up incredibly well. But I also watched all of the Mad Max Mel Gibson movies in preparation for it. So I felt like I had a really good handle on the world that George Miller built. And Furiosa feels like a kind of perfect marriage of all of them. You know, it does have the action spectacle of Mad Max Fury Road, though it makes you wait like an hour to get into it, which I think is a bold move on George Miller's part. But it also has all of the world building that he's put into those Mel Gibson movies. Chris Hemsworth plays a ridiculously corny, campy villain who is also terrifying. Like he like switches modes basically, where sometimes he feels like an 80s fab supervillain or something, and then other times it seems like, holy shit, this guy is incredibly powerful and dangerous. It really builds the world of the wasteland, I guess you would call it, remarkably well, and in a way that didn't bore me the way that exposition usually does. It just felt like a whole lot of fun. Like, there are all these side characters from Fury Road who show up here and are given kind of a richer backstory. If it weren't executed so well, it would feel sometimes like the moment in Solo where we learn how Han Solo got his last name.
Oh,
you know,
no.
like there are a lot of payoff moments where it's like, oh, that's why that happened. That's why that happened. But it's executed so well. It never felt clunky at all. It was always gratifying when it happened. Like, this is not Fury Road, right? Like, I don't think it's a masterpiece. I don't think it's like 5 out of 5 or even 4.5 out of 5, but it's a really, really, really fucking good prequel.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to dig it a lot when it comes out next week.
Yeah, I'm excited. For a second, I thought it was actually coming out this weekend, and then I checked my ticket, and I'm like, oh wait, no, it's the following weekend. But it would be funny if it was like just a few days after.
That would be really funny. Because that would mean people would be lining up for the morning after screening on Thursday when Thursday night it was already going to be premiering.
Yeah, I guess that would make it a little weirder.
So they gave a week head start at least.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely recommend people check that one out.
I am excited, and since it's coming out the weekend you're getting back, maybe that'll turn into our first full-fledged review or something.
Yeah, I fly back. I get back Sunday night, so we can still do an actual review of it on Monday. I think it'll be fun to talk about.
Cool. Then everybody can look forward to that, and we may or may not be able to look forward to the next film, which at least in premise I'm into.
Yeah, The Girl with the Needle. So why don't you tell me what you've heard about this movie, because I don't know what is spoiled in the synopsis and what isn't.
So I read 2 different short little blurbs, and so it's a Danish crime drama about a woman who is pregnant, who goes to work for a place that helps people move their kids to other places if they don't want a kid, but there might be something more nefarious happening. So I think I know stuff that I'm not saying directly right now.
Yep, I understand. Yeah, keep not saying it. But I had a similar experience where just Googling this movie, like days before it even came out, there were certain adjectives that were used to describe the sort of drama this is that I would say when you watch the movie are played as big reveals very late in the film.
Okay. Yeah,
so that's why I was curious about what it is. What I would say is this is a quite good movie. I did really enjoy it. Enjoy is a strong word. It's a very unsettling movie.
Yeah.
So enjoy maybe isn't the right feeling. Name aside, this is nothing like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo or something. Like this is not in any way a kind of like heart palpitating crime thing. This is much more of what I imagine like a Handmaid's Tale might feel like, or I'm trying to think of a comp. It feels a lot more like a kind of harrowing abortion drama would feel. You know, it's like focusing on one woman's experience of being pregnant, having to figure out what to do with the baby, and then the kind of like terrifying world that women live in Denmark, but presumably, you know, all around the world also, when they aren't able to control their bodies. It is formally very kind of austere. You know, it's like the camera doesn't move a lot. It's black and white. There are stylistic elements that make you need to be a little bit patient with it at times, but it makes it feel like a kind of nightmare. There's also disfigured faces in this movie. There are nefarious acts that happen late in the film. There are kind of hazy dream sequences where everything gets a little blurry and nightmarish. It is very unsettling, but I thought it was quite good. And I was shocked to learn in the credits that it is based on true events. Literally, it isn't literally a true story, but I guess something close to this actually happened, which is fucking demented. For reasons that I won't spoil to the people who don't know what it's about.
So the first description I saw referenced the real life thing, and that gave me a certain amount of context. And then I saw a different description which recontextualized what, because it was just about the person that it's about. And then the other description told me about the vantage point the film is from, and then I was like, okay, I think I figured out, I think I know what is, like, it helped me understand, I think, what both descriptions were trying to say.
So you should know and I haven't Googled the real story, but the person that it's about, that is like a 30 minutes before the end of the movie reveal. So it is just kind of shocking to me how freely people are willing to say that. Like, I don't know if you're supposed to go in knowing all this, because to me, the journey of the movie is having no fucking idea where it's headed. But yeah, I think you'll dig it. I think it is a little bit more art house than maybe what the description suggests, but it does have a lot to recommend.
The quote that keeps sticking out to me that I've seen is commercially uncompromised work, which to me means not for general audiences.
Probably not, but again, like, dystopian nightmares do occasionally do well, so who knows? Maybe this would find a home.
All I know is I'm excited, and the poster, which is it's like an all-black poster with this white needle. The poster just looks dope.
Nice.
All right, moving on, Stephen, to the film I think you were referencing earlier.
Yeah, I was. I almost regret that, so I'm not going to underline the reference that I made before.
Okay, sorry.
But no, it's totally fine. But yeah, the movie is Bird by Andrea Arnold, who I've already name dropped here as a comparison. I mean, I loved American Honey. It was my favorite film of that year. I love her work in general. Like Fish Tank, I think is an amazing movie as well. Even the Pretty Little Lies, is that the name of the show?
I know there's too many
Big
shows.
Little Lies.
Yeah.
Pretty Little Liars and Big Little Lies.
That's what I was saying.
I just like her style.
Yeah,
I love her filmmaking style, right? It is 1,000% up my alley. It's like very naturalistic, very close usually to young characters who are going through some kind of inner turmoil, who are maybe fuck-ups in a way, and she tends to kind of like rhapsodize the fuck-ups and rhapsodize the way that they find beauty in their life, and it's just... her work is so my jam. And Bird is a movie about a 12-year-old girl who lives in, it seems like a poor town in England, though Barry Keoghan plays her dad, so I kept wanting to believe it was Ireland, but I don't think it is in the context of the movie. And she's basically living in poverty. Her parents are divorced. She lives with her dad, played by Barry, who is very young, as you would expect, given the actor. And he's kind of like a heavily tattooed, maybe gangster. If not gangster, he feels like a ruffian. You know, he feels like a guy who, like, he wants to scrape up money for the wedding he's having with the woman he's only known for a few months. And so he buys a toad that he thinks can excrete slime that he can sell as hallucinogenic drugs. Like he's a guy who has... just as one example, a guy who has all sorts of shady schemes.
Is he just playing the dad from Scrapper?
Pretty much, yeah. This is pretty much Scrapper core, at least for him. But yeah, the lead character, her dad, he means well, but he's clearly a little bit of a fuck up. Her brother is in a gang, and her mom, who she's separated from, has already, I believe, remarried and re-divorced, and is now, like, tends to live with random boyfriends who don't treat her very well. And it's kind of just a movie about this girl coming to terms with her life. She doesn't have a good relationship with her dad. She doesn't want to attend the wedding because she doesn't respect the fact that he's getting married to this new woman. And she's just trying to, like, survive. And along the way, she meets a character named Bird, who is an older man, played by, I should remember his name offhand, Franz Rogowski. I was going to say Franz Rogowski, and then I was like, no, that's the Monsters, Inc. character.
I mean, you're not wrong.
Folks, I took melatonin a little while ago, so we're starting to feel it. Anyway, she meets this character of Bird, who seems like a free spirit. He comes across as queer, though we never find out for sure. And he's kind of just roaming through life, and something attracts her to that, right? Like she can't look away from this vision of a person who can actually control their destiny and do whatever they want. And they kind of wind up helping each other throughout the course of the movie, while a bunch of family drama starts to accelerate. What I'm not mentioning here yet is actually a big part of the film, which is that it's kind of a fairy tale. And it's a fairy tale in ways that you wouldn't expect for the first maybe hour of the movie because the style is so naturalistic and raw. You know, it feels like yet another 8th grade type movie, right? But then there are these flourishes where it becomes either metaphorically fantastical or literally fantastical, and I don't know which is which, and I don't think Andrea Arnold wants us to have an opinion on that. It's a lot weirder than I thought it was going to be, and I fucking dug it for that. I thought that was really, really cool, even though I think it's actually going to hurt its chances at finding a wider audience, because this isn't a movie that is just going to make you cry. It's a movie that is going to bring you close to the point of crying and then have moments that make you go, wait, what? What am I witnessing? And if you're able to live in just the emotional wavelength of the movie, I think it is beautiful. That is definitely where I lived. But if you find yourself being drawn to plot and questions of what literally occurred, I think it'll be a little bit of a letdown for people. Like, it gets you so close and then pulls out all these stops that I thought were really audacious and cool, but I do not think will be widely popular.
I'm laughing hard, not at the description, but at the fact that I think you're secretly telling me I'm not going to like this movie.
That is exactly what I'm secretly telling you. Unless you go in with the context that this is a fairy tale. Like, if you go in thinking I'm watching Tigers Are Not Afraid, I think you might really like it.
This is like a big fish situation.
Exactly, yeah. I did not go in with that context. And so for me, I just had to ride with the emotional through line, and I very much enjoyed that.
Yeah.
But because about an hour into the movie, I was like, Chris would fucking love this. I do have an inner Chris for every screening I attend, by the way.
And then an hour and 5 minutes into it, you were like, "Oh, Chris is."
Yeah, I was like, "Oh, maybe he won't."
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm still interested.
Yeah, for sure. And I cannot stress enough how good Barry Keoghan is in this movie. I really, really, really love him in it, and I do think he might be a big enough draw to actually pull people into this. And he is. Even though he isn't the center of the film, like the girl is definitely the center, he is sort of the bookend emotional arc of the film in a way that I think is very satisfying in that naturalistic, regular drama way. So even if you're kind of confused in the middle, I think you're going to like where it starts and where it ends.
Cool. Well, before you flew away, a teaser for this next film dropped. And all I know about this film is that teaser and the fact that this is a very, very divisive film that apparently got 13 minutes standing ovation and booze.
13 minutes standing ovation, really?
No.
I guess it did.
Maybe I'm confusing it with something else, but I heard it was like a bunch of.
No, I think Furiosa might have.
Okay, maybe I'm conflating them, but it's definitely people are either obsessed with this film or hate it. I tried to read the description, and I hated the description of it.
I mean, the thing about Megalopolis is there is a whole myth around the making of this movie. Like, supposedly Francis Ford Coppola had the idea while he was filming Apocalypse Now, which means like while he was making the last movie that everyone agrees is like a masterpiece of his, right? Like there are other things he's done, like Rumblefish and Peggy Sue Got Married and The Cotton Club. Like, he's done good things that people mostly like, but that 70s run ended with Apocalypse Now, and this was the thing he wanted to make and has been trying to make ever since, is Megalopolis. He tried to fund it in the early 80s. He tried to fund it in the late 80s. He tried in the 90s. He had a cast lined up in the early 2000s. Every time he tries to make this movie, it doesn't work for some reason. Like, no one will finance it, or the cast drops out, or for whatever reason, he just can't get it off the ground. So the fact that he finally made this movie and it was coming to Cannes was a big, big, big deal. Like, I don't believe there was a 13-minute standing ovation at the end of this movie.
Okay.
But I feel like the ovation at the start of this movie might have been that long.
Okay.
Like, just when he entered the theater. Because everyone was like, holy shit, you did it, dude. And to be fair, that doesn't mean everyone thought this is going to be amazing. I think most people in the theater were like, this is going to be fucking something, whatever it is. But, you know, There's a thing in the back of your head that really wants to praise the fact that a person managed to make a movie after over 40 years of attempting to do it, like the artistic perseverance of it.
Yeah.
But also kind of knows, like, maybe there's a reason no one let it get made up until now. So I think the whole audience was kind of like weighing both of those possibilities. And yeah, this movie is a fucking lot.
So
it is a lot of movie.
I assume you haven't seen this teaser, but it's just Adam Driver on the end of a building thinking about stepping off, starting to step off, and then yelling time stop, and then cut to black. So
yeah, so that is the opening scene of the movie.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't even know there had been a teaser already. This movie has so many ideas. I'm not even going to try to get into the plot or the name of all the characters because I think it's just going to be way too hard to remember. There's Mayor Cicero and Caesar Catalina and Claudio and Crassus, and everyone is named after like ancient Roman figures.
I was like, wait, is this the Planet of the Apes movie?
It's funny you say that because this is like the second movie of the festival that has had characters that I thought were related to Proximus from Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I would argue actually that Chris Hemsworth in Furiosa is basically Proximus, and I'm curious if you agree when you see it next week.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
Yeah, but anyway, the kernel of an idea that FFC started with 40 years ago was tell an allegory about the fall of Rome or the waning years of Rome set in a modern American metropolis, right? Like that was his big idea, was I want to do some grand thing about imperialism and cultural decay or whatever, and I want it to be set in America. I want it to be a modern day thing. But he took that very, very, very literally. So all of these characters are, they're named after these ancient Roman figures. There is a Colosseum, there are Vestal Virgins, there are gladiators, sort of, in this movie. Multiple people wear togas, though I think it's mostly just at costume parties, but it's hard to say. Shia LaBeouf is very prominently in this movie, which was already kind of uncomfortable. And he plays just a like super creepy, irritating fail son, who is like... Honestly, if he has to be in a movie, it's good that it's someone who you are like supposed to be deeply unnerved by and kind of hate the moment you see them. But there's so much movie because alongside all of those like ancient Roman things, there's also Aubrey Plaza playing a newscaster called Wow Platinum, who talks mostly in like sexual innuendo and is trying to seduce people. There are subplots about architecture. The premise of the movie basically is that Adam Driver has discovered a new material called megalon, which he wants to use to create a new utopian city, a city that molds with the people in some way. He's also the urban development lead of the town, and him and the mayor basically have a power struggle over who gets to define what happens in the city. And I say that as if there's a plot.
The mayor likes the decay of the city, and Adam Driver wants to raise it up to this new sort of...
The mayor is conservative. He's a pragmatist. He's like, I'm trying to make things better around the margins, but we should stick with what we know. We should stick with concrete. Like, they literally are talking about the way buildings are made, but I think it has to be as a metaphor for, like, how should we govern our society? But there's also... a love triangle.
Wait, are we talking about tennis?
Basically, this is as obvious in its metaphors as Challengers, but way less narratively neat in its construction. Because unlike Challengers, which has one metaphor that it executes pretty much flawlessly, this has a million. This is about the fall of civilization, but it's also about, sprawling sci-fi. It's about the creative process. It's very clearly about Francis Ford Coppola and like the artistic vision that makes you want to create something of your own. It's also about palace intrigue. It's about freedom of expression. It's about backstabbing and the dangers of populism. It's about urban planning. It's about a star-crossed romance. It's about philosophy. It's about so many fucking things that they all cancel each other out, and it kind of isn't about anything.
Wait a second, Steven. Is he Adam Driver's character, and the megalon that he discovered is
Yes.
Megalopolis.
Pretty much, yes. It is this. The movie is so self-aggrandizing. Like Adam Driver spends, I feel like, 10 minutes quoting Hamlet in part of the movie. People are constantly quoting philosophers and other famous people. Lawrence Fishburne plays a character who is also the narrator of the movie, who routinely steps in to wax poetic about the fall of Rome and civilization in decay, and speaking in very like grand words. It is a very, very, very self-serious movie that also is very, very comedic in kind of surprising and weird places. There's a lot of sex humor in this movie that comes out of nowhere. A lot of the dialogue is very, very theatrical and stilted. There's a moment, probably my favorite moment in the movie involves Jon Voight, who is the character of Crassus, like a real character who mostly speaks in the same highfalutin way everyone else does, suddenly shouting, "Look at this boner I've got." There's a subplot about a deep faked sex tape that is meant to smear a character. There's kind of a don't look up thing that happens in this movie. It is really, really, really audacious and strange, and sometimes it kind of worked, right? Like the feeling of being in a crowded premiere with the director watching this absolutely chaotic thing that he somehow like defied gravity and sold half of his vineyard to create. Some of it was kind of beautiful, right? And there are little images and moments that I found actually breathtaking, but most of it I found kind of boring and confused and a little bit bewildering. So yeah, it is a weird movie. There's also at least one thing that happened that I'm pretty sure only could have occurred at the premiere, which is that halfway through the movie, there's a scene where Adam Driver is speaking at a press conference, and while that press conference was going on, a light appeared on screen and a person dragged a microphone, or a light appeared on the stage, like below the screen. A person dragged a microphone out to the center of the stage, and then a small spotlight revealed Jason Schwartzman asking questions to the Adam Driver on the screen, like giving his dialogue in real life rather than in the movie.
Huh.
And the house lights went up a little bit, and it was honestly kind of amazing, like just because no one thinks that is going to happen in the middle of a movie, right? Like
Yeah.
you're suddenly in an interactive experience. I don't know why it happened. I don't know what it means, and I have no idea what anyone else watching this movie is going to see during that moment instead, because I assume Jason Schwartzman isn't just going to every screening of this movie in perpetuity from now on.
Well, it's like they didn't know who they were casting for that role, and they had to print like the thing to send to Cannes, and they're like, it's just we're only going to hear half the conversation, and then he just shows up in time to do it all in one take.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read press reviews of this movie, but I imagine if you read something from the press, they will not mention this, because I assume it only happened in like the public premiere of the movie. Rather than like a press screening. So it was interesting, but it just speaks to the kind of clash of tones of this movie, where sometimes it is actually really jaw-dropping because it's just doing things that you could not possibly expect.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it just felt confused and bloated and lame. And the visuals, like, occasionally they're really beautiful. There's this moment where it becomes, right after the Jason Schwartzman thing actually, where it becomes almost like a triptych, where it's like the screen splits in three, and it's showing like a bunch of documentary footage, and then it merges into this kind of like beautiful vision of the future that I found really moving. I don't know why, but it like really worked on me. But then most of the visuals make the future look like Tomorrowland.
Yeah.
Like it, the closest comp I can make, I think, to this, and not only because of Adam Driver, is probably Annette, in that it is a movie that clearly seems like it knows that it is being very silly and strange, but also is played for grandeur. And I don't think it really works, but I am fucking glad that I got to experience whatever the hell it was.
So here's the big question, Steven. I think there's zero chance I will like this movie.
Oh, zero. Absolutely zero.
Apparently,
But it might be a chance that you have fun disliking the movie.
So here's the question, though, because apparently, though not shot on IMAX, it was shot on some technology that allows it to take advantage of the full IMAX screen, and apparently it will be released in IMAX. Maybe once again I'm reading like weird bullshit.
But I mean, hasn't it not even found a U.S. distributor yet? I guess it's like the intention is that it'll be released in IMAX.
Yeah. I think I've seen headlines that say that the org is committed to putting it out on IMAX screens or something like that.
I can see why that moment, the moments where it suddenly becomes a kind of flight of fancy are beautiful, and I think would be pretty amazing on an IMAX, honestly, especially if Jason shows up.
Yeah, IMAX has committed screens around the world to show Megalopolis, according to the company's
it has international
CEO.
Distributors.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I think you will hate this movie, and I also think you should watch it. I think that's kind of where I have to land for everyone. Anyone who cares about, like, just, it's like a kind of historic thing that this movie exists, and I feel like it is a colossal swing and a miss that is very entertaining to see happen.
Yeah. All right. So from the description, it sounds like this next film is the most broadly appealing normal-ish film.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Why don't you tell us about whatever the film is called? I can't read my own handwriting.
Yeah, it's Christmas Eve in Miller's Point. This is I honestly didn't read anything about this movie before booking it, except for the cast. And I think a podcast I was listening to name dropped it, which made me just add it to a list. The cast is what drew me to it, because this movie has Michael Cera, it has Elsie Fisher, it has Francesca Scorsese, it has a Spielberg in the movie. It's basically like a who's who of young up-and-coming actors / the children of famous directors. And I was just like, I have to see this. Yeah. Like, this is going to be such a fun premiere with a Q&A to catch.
Yeah, and you have a history with enjoying a stacked cast Christmas-themed films at festivals, so...
Yeah, exactly. I mean... So anyway, I didn't know anything about the movie. Like, for all I knew, this was going to wind up being like it's Christmas Eve and then it turns into a horror movie, right? Like, I had no idea what it was going to be. And it wound up just being a kind of charming, wistful nostalgia piece about being home for Thanksgiving and being young. Like, this is really a very much ensemble film. There are a bunch of adults who have their own kind of drama or complicated feelings about the families that they're meeting for Christmas. There are kids who are at odds with their parents, who have crushes on each other, who want to go out and cause ruckus. There are police officers, played by Michael Cera and Greg Turkington, who drive around town in basically total silence, like awkward silence, but they're bonding with each other in like subtle ways that you feel throughout the movie. There's basically not a plot in this thing, which was a surprise to me, and I think a surprise to a lot of people who watched it. It's really just a mood piece about like being young, coming home for the holidays. It almost feels like American Graffiti or something like that, of just like, this is what childhood is like. I don't know, because I haven't searched it, that this is a period piece, but I feel like it's meant to be set in the early 2000s, just judging by the way kids play video games and the way phones look and just some of the kind of off-color things parents say that like maybe they wouldn't have said 10 years later. I thought it was charming. I thought it was nice. It wasn't fantastic or anything like that, but I think especially if it does come out, like if A24 or Neon released this around Christmas time, I think it would be like a lovely way to spend, an hour 45 minutes. But it's a very light kind of feather of a movie. It isn't doing anything really heavy or profoundly interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like people enjoyed it at least. So.
Oh yeah, that's nice. I'm glad. It's funny. I couldn't tell at all in the screening with the Q&A because it was a morning screening, which means a lot of people file out immediately, like when the credits start rolling, so they can run to somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I had no idea how well people liked it. But yeah, I liked it. I thought it was nice.
Cool. Moving on to the next one.
All right. Yeah, we are nearing the end. We're already in today now. Christmas Eve in Miller's Point I saw this morning, and then Kinds of Kindness I saw just a few hours ago. And this is Yorgos Lanthimos' surprisingly quick turnaround follow-up to Poor Things, starring Emma Stone, Willem Dafoe, Jesse Plemons. Those are the main ones, but Margaret Qualley, who we recently saw in The Driveway Dolls, also has a major role in this movie. This is basically an anthology film. It is 3 separate short stories that share exactly one character in common, who is a character that never speaks, who only shows up like in the background basically of a scene or two. Like the idea of them being connected is basically a total joke. It's like a misnomer.
Yeah, it's like the titles in this character.
Yes, exactly. Like the character has the initials RMF, if I'm remembering correctly, and every short story is basically like something about him, like RMF eats a sandwich is the name of the last one, but he does eat a sandwich technically, but it has nothing to do with that, right? Like he doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah.
What it really is that main group of characters. Hong Chow, I forgot, is also one of the rotating cast here. They play different characters in each of the 3 shorts. And each short, if there's a theme that ties them together, I think it is about love and obsession and the way that love can drive you to do crazy things. But that's about as unifying a point as I can put on it. For the most part, these are all really classically weird, like thinking Killing of a Sacred Deer or Dogtooth or something, Yorgos Lanthimos short stories. I don't know if I should really get into the plot of them, because I think discovering the plot is kind of the fun of these shorts, like seeing over time what is going on. But it's basically a lot of awkward cringiness, a lot of characters who are basically behaving because they're being forced to by someone else. There's a lot of sudden moments of violence that happen usually late in all of these shorts. And I thought it was pretty riveting, at least for the first half of every short. Like, the ideas are really, really, really good. I think if you were to write like a 1-paragraph short story about each of these, it would be amazing. But the movie as a whole is like almost 3 hours long. So each short is almost a full hour. And I don't know if I'm alone here, because reviews seem to be extremely positive of this thing. But I kind of felt like the shorts started to drag before they were finished. Like it felt like there wasn't quite enough juice there. It didn't feel totally like a movie to me. It felt like Yorgos was like, hey, I have this amazing cast and crew who I've worked with before. Let me just have some fun with them. You know, let me reuse them to execute on a few other ideas I have and just see what happens with it. It's a lot more loose, you know, than his typical movies. There's more kind of winking at the audience that happens. I liked it. I liked it. It just didn't blow me away the way I thought like the next Yorgos Emma Stone collaboration was going to blow me away. But apparently I'm in the minority, because I think people are really, really vibing with this thing.
Yeah, people seem to really love it. Question for you. If this was a thing on a streaming service where you could watch them at your own pace, and you weren't in 1 3-hour block, and you weren't, 4 days into having flown across the world.
Sleep deprived. Yeah.
Do you think that it would hit you different?
I think it would work. Yes, I think it would work a lot better if you were able to space them out, like the Wes Anderson shorts from last year, and basically watch one, reset your brain, do your own thing, watch another. Because my feeling that they were dragging really didn't kick in until the second and third short, which kind of speaks to what you just said, that it might just have been the like cumulative exhaustion of seeing them all together. But I will say, like, the ideas are super, super clever and they're really well executed. I think Jesse Plemons is honestly the MVP here, though Emma Stone is also, you know, always amazing.
Yeah.
And it goes to some dark places, you know, like there's a cult involved in one of these. There's a murder that's involved in another. There is body horror that happens, and like there's a lot of shit that happens here. And I liked it quite a bit, and I think pretty much anyone will like it, which is why I expect it will have a very high Rotten Tomatoes score. I just feel like maybe the audience score is not going to be like 90. It seems more like it'll be like in the 70s or something, you know, like hey, I'm glad that I saw that, but I don't feel like this is going to be anyone's favorite thing of the year, but I might be misreading the situation.
I'm definitely curious to check it out. All right. We got one more on the list. Did you also see this one today?
Mm-hmm. I did.
Okay.
Oh, Canada. I got out of that screening about 2 hours ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so Oh Canada is Paul Schrader's latest movie. You and I have caught a few Paul Schrader movies in recent years.
Well,
at least we did The Card Counter.
Yeah.
Oh, did you only see that one?
No.
You didn't do First
I
Reformed?
didn't like First Reformed at all, but I really like The Card Counter. So
yeah.
wild card.
And you
here.
didn't see Master Gardener?
I did not. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, Paul Schrader he's never really gone away, but he's very much been prominent and pretty, had a high creative output over the last few years. And this, Oh Canada, it's based on a book. I don't know much about the book, but I do know that whatever it's based on, he must have changed it dramatically because it is very, very clearly a personal piece for him. Like, not quite autobiographical, but the star is Richard Gere stars as an aging documentary filmmaker who made it big in the early 70s and reached critical acclaim, but is full of guilt and self-loathing and remorse. And he basically wants to confess what a fraud he is before he dies, you know. And in that way, it is very much in line with a lot of Paul Schrader stuff, you know, like The Card Counter is also about someone who is haunted by grief and their like terrible history that they want to atone for. Master Gardener is very much about that too. He's been making this movie forever, and this time it feels like he's turning the camera inward. What's interesting about this movie is it's framed as a series of interviews or one kind of extended documentary interview between a filmmaker played by Michael Imperioli, and this aging former filmmaker played by Richard Gere. And Richard Gere is attempting to tell his life story, but pretty quickly the life story goes off the rails. He gets confused about chronology. He kind of is jumping back and forth. Jacob Elordi plays the younger version of him in flashbacks, except for sometimes Richard Gere plays the version of him instead when he's kind of talking in first person about how it felt to be there in the moment. For the first 20 or 30 minutes, I thought I was going to get a movie that was just going to make me weep uncontrollably. You know, like that is really what it is setting up is, oh my God, this is like a deathbed confession by an artist who knows that they have plenty of things to atone for in their life. And it fucks with the formula over and over again. And kind of the movie feels like the way a person who is close to death, who is losing track of memory and combining different ideas and getting confused about chronologies might perceive things. It jumps around. It has a kind of emotional logic, but not really a plot-based logic. And I still found it pretty moving in the end. Like I still liked it quite a bit, but I think it lost a lot of people
Okay.
when it started throwing in those wrenches and decided to not be just the kind of straightforward personal story that it was promising. If anything, I feel like this is a movie about what if you can't atone? Like, what if there's no way to confess what you've done because you can't possibly communicate to another person all the evil in your heart or all the ways that you have failed to live up to society's expectations. And instead, what if you could just be free? You know, find a way to just release yourself from the need to atone for anything at all. And that emotional idea I found really moving. Like honestly, I'm pretty moved just talking about it now. But the movie as a whole it's confusing. I think it's pretty good, but it is definitely not my favorite thing of the festival. I think I would need to give it another watch before I really settled on that. But this is Richard Gere's first collaboration with him since American Gigolo, which was basically the movie that put him on the map in the early 1980s. So it's fun to see him go from playing a sexy gigolo to playing an old person who I feel like is a stand-in for Paul Schrader. Like, watching Paul Schrader sit down to applause and then immediately cutting to old, bald Richard Gere, I'm like, I feel like you're talking about yourself here, buddy.
Nice. Well, anything interested on the docket for tomorrow?
Yeah, I haven't totally processed it yet. So tomorrow morning, I'm seeing a couple In Certain Regard screenings, which I almost never look up beforehand. I go and I get whatever I get. That's kind of how I like to play those. And then later in the day, there's Emilia Perez, which is the new movie by Jacques Audiard. I don't know if you ever saw Rust and Bone, but he's the person that made that Marion Cotillard movie from a while ago. Or A Prophet is like a really, really, really cool crime drama or prison drama that he created as well. So he's a kind of like beloved French filmmaker, nowhere near on the level of acclaim as like internationally as someone like a Yorgos Lanthimos is. But I think to a cinephile audience, he's a pretty big deal. So I have a feeling this is going to be a packed premiere. I'm also catching a movie called Rumors, which I have not looked up at all, except to...
So you haven't heard any rumors about
I don't know
Rumors.
anything about this movie. Except the image shows a brain on it. And in my head, this has to be a midnight screening, even though it isn't. Like, it just... Something about the vibe of this movie makes me think it is going to be a kind of like a genre flick, but I have not Googled it. And at this point, I'm just going to show up blind. And then I am going to a midnight premiere tomorrow, if I have the stamina for it. And that is a movie called The Balconettes. The reason I'm going to this is that it is directed by Naomi Merlant, who was one of the two women in Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and is also the partner of Celine Sciamma. And I'm just curious to see what she does, and it's interesting that she's going at it with a kind of genre movie that would premiere at midnight at Cannes. So I'm curious. I'm curious enough to want to see what all of it is about. But big things that are on the horizon are The Apprentice. That's going to be an interesting one on Monday. That is a movie about Trump, played by Sebastian Stan, where Jeremy Strong plays... I want to say Roy Cohn is the name of the lawyer that he worked with. It is basically a big, like, kind of biopic about Trump in the 80s or 90s, and I have no fucking idea.
Is Sebastian Stan just doing all of the biopics? Like, anybody he can play, he's just going after it?
It seems like it, yeah. Sunday night is Horizon and American Saga. We talked about that, I think, off mic, but maybe on mic. The Kevin Costner Part 1 and Part 2, I believe they'll be merged together. That is going to be premiering here. And then on Tuesday, Anora, the new film by Sean Baker, is coming out. And that is where I'm putting most of my chips in terms of what is going to be the thing that most makes me cry at this festival.
Cool. Well, any parting thoughts before you drift off to sleep?
My only parting thought is realizing that next time I'm not going over every single movie.
At least not this late in the morning.
Definitely. If I've played my cards right, then by the next time we talk, I will have probably seen like over 20 movies already. And so it's going to be really hard to do that format.
I mean, you'll just have to pick and choose which ones you want to talk about. But for now, we're going to let Steven go get in bed and rest up for his screenings tomorrow. For now, though, Stephen, if people want to find you throughout the week, where can they find you?
People can find me on Threads and Blue Sky at sdavidmiller at sdavidmiller.com. And this week and next week, you can also find me on Decoding Everything, David Chen's newsletter, where I've so far done 2 dispatches from Cannes. I'm shooting for 3 or 4, depending on kind of what I get into and what winds up being interesting to talk about. And so that's been a lot of fun.
Cool. People can find me over at ChristopherInRealLife.com or ChristopherIRL on a number of social platforms. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com where you get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at twitter.com/spoilerwarning, facebook.com/thespoilerwarning, or instagram.com/thespoilerwarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from maybe like some sort of weird jingle I can grab from the Cannes YouTube page. Yeah, that's it. We will be back sometime in the future with maybe another, one way or another, there'll be another dispatch after you get home, then probably a Furiosa review, and then probably this Mystery Challengers review that never got posted.
Oh, yeah, I was curious about that.
At the very least, that should be hitting VOD, I assume, shortly, so we can time it with that release as usual for episodes that sit in the can for a while. But yeah, people want to know about Cannes first. Yeah. That was completely unintentional. But yeah, That's it. Thank you for listening, and thank you for calling on all the way from France, Stephen.
Thanks for accommodating the very, very, very weird scheduling that is required to record from San Francisco and France at the same time.
Wait, are you recording? Just kidding. All right. Goodbye, everybody.